work that lets a person listen more than talk, and she loved it for that. Her red knit cap sat low, her cheeks were still wind bright from the walk home. A heavy parka steamed on a folding chair. On the back step, a milk crate of sand and a shovel, small rituals for a long season. Around midnight, the blue house settled one tiny creak, a reminder that wood remembers weather. Somewhere, far off, a train laid down two thin notes. Corinne turned off the sink, reached for the lamp chain, and then it happened. 3 knuckles touched the front door. Not a pound, not frantic. 3 light, even taps, the kind you give a house when you believe it's already awake. Corinne blinked. Midnight visitors belonged to July porches and borrowed sugar, not a January freeze where even the dogs had the good sense to stay in. She listened. The house leaned with her. 3 more taps, identically spaced, like a metronome living inside whoever stood outside. She took unhurried steps through the dining room, past a braided rug, a shelf of old mill photos, a jar of leftover fir boughs. She stopped 3 feet from the door. Bethel is the sort of town where you can identify a neighbor by the shape of their boot prints. She hadn't heard any prints come up the wooden stairs, but new snow swallows a lot of sins. She set a hand on the chain. "Yes?" she called level. "Who's there?" A pause long enough to count to 4. Then a soft, tired voice, young or simply worn out by the night. "Sorry, ma'am, I'm looking for the Deans. Wrong house, I think." The Deans lived 2 streets over near the school. Mustard clapboard, perennial porch light. Corinne pictured a face gone red with cold and embarrassment. She kept the chain engaged, turned the deadbolt, and cracked the door an inch, then 2. Cold came in like a hand. No one stood there. In the pale coin of her porch light, empty boards, black wet seams where snow was melting on the rail, the faint hiss of flakes falling without wind. The street lay smooth and unwalked, a quilt. She lifted her eyes. Nothing moved. "Hello," she said. "I heard you. I can help you find the Deans." Silence. Something in her, something practical and sharp, disliked the game. She shortened the chain 1 link and eased the door shut. 3 more taps. Not at the door, at the living room window. Light, quick, like a sparrow asking to be let in. Corinne pivoted, left the front door on its chain, crossed to the dark window, and clicked on the lamp. In the glass, she saw her own reflection, cap low, mouth set. Outside, a blank yard, lilac bushes and white shoulders, no prints pushing toward the house. Behind her, the chain made a tiny metallic sigh, as if the door had settled. Corinne wasn't a fearful woman, she was a list maker. Lists fix chaos. If there's a problem in Bethel, somebody has a phone number for it. She reached for her mobile, found it under a magazine, and let the screen light her cheek. She considered reasons. A teen dare, a drunk apology, a stranger embarrassed to need help. She flipped the light to flashlight and went back to the door to test the chain. On the second link, the metal popped a bright tiny snap, a necklace breaking. The door opened another inch, not because she pulled, but because the swollen jam had been waiting for permission. Colder air slid inside. The porch looked like static. No silhouette, no shadow, just stillness. The unnerving kind you feel when a familiar room has been ever so slightly rearranged. "Stop," she told herself. The door, the night. She closed it, reset what was left of the chain, threw the deadbolt, and put a palm flat on the wood. Out loud. For her own nervous system, she took inventory. Door shut, chain up, deadbolt engaged. I'm inside. Snow on the porch. No footprints. It's after midnight. I'm calling non-emergency now. Rilla at the sheriff's office answered with a flannel voice. Corinne summarized, 3 knocks, wrong name, empty porch, window taps. Rilla took the address, promised a deputy after helping a stranded car on Greenwood Road, and asked if Corinne was alone. Yes. Then, do not open again for anyone you can't see and greet through glass. Understood, Corinne said, and said Rilla's name back to her, because names make long nights shorter. She switched off the hall light and watched her street from the living room window. Across the way, the blue house was dark. Miss Doyen had gone to Lewiston for the week. A camper sagged under a tarp. Farther down, the broker's wire reindeer still stood in their thin fur coats. Snow hushed everything. The heater sighed and fell silent. Shadows stretched, then tightened. Her reflection in the window became a stranger standing too close. She looked at the doormat, no melt. The rail, no hand. A soft shuffle at the back door. She didn't flinch. She moved by plan. The back door had a small square of frosted glass. Anyone became a blur behind it. Corinne set her fingertips on the wood. "Deputy?" she called, letting the word do some work. "If that's you, please speak." The shuffle paused, then nudged left, where the sand crate Saturday. Plastic tapped softly, like a toe on a toy. Fox? Curious neighbor? Someone deciding whether to be decent? A thin snake of cold slid under the gap and wrapped her ankles. She saw herself, from above, a woman in wool socks coaxing her house into staying brave. "Please," a voice said, but not from outside, from the dark phone in her hand, a live line hollowness. "Please, can you help me? Wrong house. Wrong number. I have the wrong number." She woke the screen. No incoming call, only her outgoing to the sheriff. She set the phone on the counter like it was an egg she didn't want to crack and realized her mouth had gone dry. A glass of water steadied her hands. Her teeth clicked the rim. Small, human, ordinary. The back door knocked again. Not gentle now. 3 careful, even raps with weight behind them. The doorknob twitched, tested, stopped. Headlights washed Vernon Street with white bars. A cruiser idled. A brown-jacketed shape stepped into her porch light and raised a hand. Corinne's whole body let go. Deputy K. Bourdain, tired, decent, stood in snow-dusted eyebrows and a hat that had seen winters before this one. "Evening, ma'am. You called about a knock?" She told it straight. The taps. The wrong name. The empty porch. The window. The back door. The voice on a silent phone. He didn't smirk. He did the quiet arithmetic of a person paid to stand between strangers and the night. He asked to walk the perimeter. She waved him on. His beam skimmed low, the way you do when you care about tracks more than drama, he murmured to his radio. When he came back, cuffs whitened. He shook his head once. "Not a print," he said. "Doormat stone cold. New powder should have told on anyone coming up your steps. If they were here, they were careful or weightless." It read like a joke. It didn't feel like one. He thumbed the snap chain like a jeweler. Old metal. January is mean to things that work hard. He left a card. "If it happens again, call. Don't open. Even if it says my name, if it knows my name, call twice." He drove off with the small promises that keep small towns upright. Corinne reset the door, stood by the window until the glass grew warm under the lamp, placed the broken link on the table, and said the deputy's name out loud. Kellen Bourdain. The pantry watch ticked once in agreement. Sleep didn't come. She didn't insist. She dozed, sitting up in her grandmother's chair, to the heater's patient cycle and the sibilant peace of falling snow. Morning arrived honest. Plows took back the street with orange mouths. Coffee turned the world 1 degree kinder. Corinne ordered a new chain and deadbolt. The hardware owner offered to drop them by just to have something to do. By lunch, the bright brass was installed and the house breathed easier. By late morning, she'd nearly filed the whole thing under odd but survivable. She phoned the dean's no midnight wanderer. She checked on Mr. Bix. His porch light would stay on. The librarian, honor bly friend, former student, stopped by with a scarf over her mouth. Rilla says your house tried on a ghost. A generous word for a good knock, Corinne said, making tea. When she mentioned the voice through a dark phone, Honor's hand went to her own pocket. My Aunt Reba got a call during the 2009 storm, Honor said, from my uncle's number. He was on the couch next to her. No sound. Then a voice used her name like it had a library card. She set the phone down and said my uncle's name twice. The voice said, "No," like it was correcting her. Did she believe it? I believed the way she sounded when she finished, like she'd passed a test she never agreed to take. They made a plan. Supper at Honors above the library, cards, easy conversation. At 3:40, the hardware man fit the new chain, talking loudly and cheerfully about a raccoon that learned to knock with a spoon. Corinne dropped the broken link into her desk. Not to throw away on the day it happened. The evening at Honors was ordinary, in the best way. Garlic, old paper, a radio station from the middle of the country. At 10:10, Corinne walked home under a coin moon, let herself into the blue house at 10:32, and set her keys in the bowl. At 10:36, 2 quick knocks at the front door. She stood with her palm a hand width from the wood. "I'm not opening," she said, frank but not rude. "Say your name and purpose or try another address." Silence. Then the almost bass of a voice felt in the chest more than heard. "Please. Wrong door, wrong number." Same words. Heavier. She killed the lamp, let the room go, exterior, scanned the street. Plenty of prints now from a day of living, but none fresh to her steps. The kettle clicked on the stove. The ordinary arrived right on time. She poured tea, decided her mouth would speak only on purpose. At 11:03, 3 polite knocks at the back door. She dialed non-emergency again. This time Kent answered voice like sand. A car was close. She thanked him twice. She braced her feet, let her body remember its own width. Watched the frost square turn the dark to lace. The knob didn't move. Deputy Bourdain returned, eyebrows full of starlight. "We're going to pretend I came because I missed your lamp," he said. They walked the lot lines. His light wrote arcs on snow. They listened to soil with their hands. He left another card and one practical instruction. If she left town, tell him. He'd swing by. Saturday passed. Sunday brought distant bells and a walk for oranges. Monday pulled bright curtains, then closed them early. No knocks. Corinne's shoulders dropped. Tea tasted like kept promises. The broken link stayed unchanged in the drawer. Then Tuesday, full circle. At 11:56 p.m., 4 minutes shy of the same hour, a voice came from the little radio by her kitchen clock. It was unplugged. It said her name quietly and asked if she was there. Her throat chose its loyalties. She approached, didn't touch, listened to the way vowels met consonants, stepped back, and said, like iron, that the county had rules for midnight and she was old enough to follow them. It tried other doors. The living room vent pinged her name as the heat came on. The phone rang with no number. The dead doorbell found its resurrection. Each time the voice asked for a person, not a favor. It tried town names like Keys, Miss Doyon, Mr. Bix, Honor, Rilla. It even tried Kellen Bourdain, as if it had learned the card in her hand. She smiled despite herself. "Deputy," she corrected the air. "Not tonight." She let the tea go cold. She laid no hand on any handle. She apologized for nothing, not even her stubbornness. At 3 minutes past midnight, she felt it lose interest. The house exhaled. The radio remembered it was a radio. Air moved room to room with nothing to ask. Corinne set the kettle once more, carried a mug to the window, and stood until her reflection looked like a person whose name had been kept safe. Then she slept like someone had tucked a quilt around the town. Over the next week, stories salted Bethel. A woman on North Road heard a screen door open and close for nobody. A late dog walker heard tapping on stop signs like a patient hammer. The mail carrier heard her name from a garage and almost answered before remembering what day it was. No one was dragged into snow. Locks held. People learned one sentence and used it when darkness stood close. Not tonight, not this house. When the river loosened and the sun laid a silver road across it, Corinne and Honor watched the water tell itself a story. They ate pie at the diner and called fine what it was victory. On the way home, Corinne passed the Dean's mustard house and thought of that first polite voice. She detoured, set a gloved hand on their rail, and said their name into the wood, a practice she'd adopted, give places back their proper nouns. At her own door, the new chain shone ridiculous and perfect against blue paint. She ran a thumb over it and heard the small metal truth. Tonight will be ordinary. Keys in the bowl. The watch ticked. The heater hummed. The fridge sighed like an old man. From the street, 3 knocks. Not on her door, on the blue house next door, where Miss Doyon's son-in-law was picking up the last of her winter clothes. A harmless sound, not a summons. Corinne felt sudden tears. The body likes to test itself and then be returned to ease. She laughed Small Bell back in tune and said the sentence she meant to keep for every winter that followed. We don't answer the wrong knock at midnight. We count it. We name the hour. We call the people whose job is the porch. And we keep our names warm inside our mouths until morning reminds every room who belongs where. In spring, when the town smelled like wet earth and hope, Corinne swapped the fur for tulips, oiled the hinges, watched the river take its time. In summer, she carried the broken chain link to the bridge and tossed it in. It flashed once small, bright fish and vanished. She stayed to listen to the water write its own sentences, wearing the quiet expression of someone who had been invited to a test, had closed the door gently, and had chosen again to stay. He followed the voice in the woods. In late November 2016, a small Vermont town quietly changed the rules for how you answer the dark. Friday night. First snow falling like ash over the Black Spruce Tract 160 square miles of public forest that starts just west of Cold Hollow and runs up to a ridge the color of old iron. Wind from the north braided through the needles in one long note that makes decent towns leave porch lights on a little later. Inside the Grange Hall, the fire department fundraiser clattered along. Raffle wheel, paper plates, kids ping-ponging between folding chairs. And one man, Orrin Vale, 39, a union electrician and lifelong night walker, kept glancing at the windows whenever a gust put its hard hands on the glass. Orrin's grandfather taught him to read the woods like a second alphabet. He carried a compass the way other men carry a pocket knife. He knew the low deer paths, the soft saddles between hills, the larch bark smell in thaw. He also knew the old county stories, the ones people tell without leaning in, the ones that move through a place like blood and show up on the skin only when the month turns cold. He knew them and didn't believe them, which his grandfather used to say is the quickest way to trip. At 9:30, the last raffle number got called. A cheer, a whistle under the eaves. Orrin stepped outside to swap boots at his truck. Official reason. Real reason, listen to the night. Sky with that pale pre-storm glow that shows up 5 minutes before the real snow decides to get serious. He tightened his laces, looked beyond the last lit porch at the forest's black shoulder. That's when he heard it. A word as soft as an unfinished thought. Hello! He locked up like an animal when a twig snaps wrong. Then a short laugh at himself, shake it off. Your name is not written in the air. Street still ordinary. A plow truck idling on the corner, TV glow in a window, boots crunching frozen grit. Nobody else stopped. He headed home, head down against the fine sting. At the seam where the last streetlight quits and the road becomes suggestion, the voice returned, clearer, from the tree line. Orrin, truck radio bouncing off metal, teenagers behind the mill, or just the human ear, born to fall in love with the shape of its own name. He didn't speed up, didn't slow down. Turned into his drive, hand on the knob, door opened, and the room warm, yellow, smelling of dry wood and laundry soap closed around him like a decision. Tea, boots off, house creaking as it accepted the cold. He told himself he'd imagined it. Then, from past his backyard, down where his fence met the Forest Service boundary, a child laughed and then shushed himself, the laugh of a kid who's won the game and wants to keep the secret. Orrin stood so fast the chair legs squealed. He took a big flashlight and his canvas coat, the one with nailhead nicks along the sleeve. Back step, breath in like medicine. The beam cut a clean cone through first skinned snow, birch leaves stuck like coins. Official reason, check the fence. Animals find holes like water. Real reason, follow the voice he said he wouldn't follow. 30 yards to the boundary, then down into the shallow gully where an old logging road becomes a mud stream in spring and a dark ribbon in summer. Tonight, a white seam sewn into black. He stepped over the sagging cedar corner post thing had wanted to retire for years. Stood in the old road. Trees leaned in, not unfriendly, just present. Far, nearer, then in the space between two breaths from nowhere at all. Oren. Over here. Flat. Calm. Spoken by someone who knew he would come. Whoever you are, wrong yard. He said to give his mouth something to do. The wind eased. The light found only clean snow. Here's where the story could have ended. He could have gone inside, called Deputy Thad Lorman, and said the sentence men like him hate. Maybe I'm imagining things. Turn the deadbolt, put the kettle back on, let the weather change the subject. Instead, because his grandfather taught him to meet strangeness with stride, he went forward 2 paces, then 2 more. Good woods do a winter trick. Honest dark makes day colors inside it. Oren walked 100 yards. 200. Counting numbers in his head must match the length of his stride. The road bent, fell, rose. The voice stayed at a leash-length distance. Third bend, a smell he couldn't place. Not smoke, not rot. A peculiar clean copper coins in snow stream under ice where no leaf has fallen. He stopped. The beam trembled once, steadied. I'm turning around, he told the night like a neighbor by trash cans. If you're real, say your name with your mouth. Answer from the left, low and near, made of breath, and something that owed breath nothing. Please. Old story word. No manners, perfect aim. He swept the light, the beam caught the hem of a wool coat behind a young fir. A dark sleeve, a pale idea of a face. His breath snagged, the sleeve moved a little. 2 slow steps, the way you approach a skittish dog. A woman. Mid-20 seconds. Hatless, hair slicked to her skull by wet snow. Wide eyes, not panic, just far away, like someone who's been walking too long in a sentence that won't end. City boots? Wrong season. She didn't look at Oren, she looked past him, toward the place where home lives in a man's imagination when he's far from it. Please, she said again, the syllable making a bull-sized cloud. I lost my brother. He's down there. He keeps answering me, but he isn't moving, and I don't have anything left to pay the dark with. Oren didn't ask the right questions. Not why here, not where are your tracks. He did what his grandfather would have done. Light to her shoulder so he wouldn't blind her. You're coming with me. We'll make a fire. Sheriff's decent. The ranger they send is decent too. We'll all go for your brother together. Half smile, like matching a photograph. Down there, she murmured, tipping her head. The ravine. Do you hear him? The forest held still the way it does when a pond is deciding if it will hold you. Far, closer, then from a compassless direction, a boy's voice. Over here, the cheerful tone of a June afternoon when the creek is yours and curfews are imaginary. How old? Oren asked. 12, she said. His name is Asa. He mimics the radio, learned it from our father, thinks if he hits the right tone, people treat him like a man, not a kid. Please. I think he fell. They moved. The ground began to disapprove. Oren nicked a white birch with his thumbnail string on the doorknob, breadcrumb for daylight, and began a new count. Short numbers you use to tie yourself to yourself. The land broke, narrow gash, choked with blowdown, bottom a slim black promise of water. Oren crouched, felt for purchase, chose a route that wouldn't let the night right itself without him. You wait here, he said, and pushed light into the dark. Halfway down, breath to the left, rustle to the right, and up ahead. "Here," the boy said, and rapped twice like knuckles on a plank. Boot slipped, shoulder caught. Breath rode back into his chest like a stranger. "I'm coming," he said. "Tell me your name." Same sunny broadcast voice. Asa Vale. Wrong. Valley in a mouth that small? He looked back. The beam sketched the woman from the knees down, the slope eating the rest. She hadn't moved. He couldn't see her face. "Asa, Oren tested the tone you use with a dog proud of its one trick. Your sister says you fell." The reply came from 3 places, one after the other, like a round sung wrong. "I fell, I fell, I fell." Clean cold slid under his coat like a hand. He turned right. Light found an old plank bridging the cut, the kind loggers tossed down for a shortcut. On it, a pair of gray glove liners, small. Beyond it, a moving black that breathed. The voice came again, now behind him, now from the far slope, now from under the plank. Sweet, teachable, wrong. Oren. "Hello," he tried. The last courtesy of people. Nothing changed. One careful step uphill. Another. The woman's boots stepped back to make room, silent as sleep. He put the light on her face. She let him. Very dark eyes, very dry, not cold, not warm. She looked like a person photographed in an eclipse. "We're going," he said, level. He climbed past her, back to the old road, and did not run. Kept the beam 3 steps ahead, made sure the ground didn't decide to turn trickster. He said soft, the name of his grandfather, the ridge, the stream, the man in town who could fix anything with a coat hanger. That's how men like him pray. The voice followed at the same polite distance, calling his name, then trying other names, one by one, like a radio dial. Mael, Thad. His father's name, the one he hadn't heard aloud in 10 years. Shape, correct. Weight, wrong. The hair on his arms tried to grow a second coat. Fence. He stepped wrong, caught his coat, cursed with relief. The light washed the line. Trees were trees. Night was night. True snow now, steady and adult. On the stoop, from just the other side of the glass, the boy knocked his small knuckles against Oren's name. Please. Inside. Back against wood. House decided to keep him. A short, embarrassed laugh. He'd forgotten the world has edges. Flashlight down. Phone up. Dispatch picked up. Torin recognized the voice. No staircase of questions. Need a courtesy drive-by, Oren said. Something at my north line in the tract. A kid, or not. Send Thad. Tell him I'll stand on the stoop like a fool until his lights hit my fence. Sergeant Thad Lorman came slow, because slow bleeds pressure out of nights like this. The light bar painted the trees blue, red, white, a cheap, honest carnival. Thad listened to Oren tell it with the part of his mouth that jokes about fear and the part that doesn't. He nodded. If it's a kid, we help. If it's not, we're not feeding it names we care about. We wait till morning. Ranger Ilsa Peregrine will bring a map, and that way she has of seeing ground that doesn't want eyes. Oren dozed badly. In a chair, boots on, long light pointed at the back door like a promise. Woke at 3, then 4:30, to the kind of quiet, good towns keep as a favor, to people who worked till midnight. Morning, polite sheet of snow on the yard, no fresh tracks. Dressed for work he wasn't going to do, drank doctor-ordered coffee, met Thad at the fence. Ilsa arrived 10 minutes later with rope and calm. Ilsa Peregrine had the patience of someone who's pulled people out of rivers, trucks, and bad ideas. She let Oren map the night with words, asked 2 questions, had him repeat the glove liners and plank bit. Then we'll walk to your nicked birch and the lip. We won't drop below without more bodies and a line. We'll bring a bell. We will not call names into the ravine. We won't teach the woods our voices. Do what I do. They walked the old road like a small procession, remarking only on the practical downed limb, slick spot, this looks fine and isn't. At the birch, she saw the thumbnail nick and gave him a coin small nod. At the lip, she set a glove down, put her ear over the edge, listened like a nurse, eyes closed a moment. When she opened them, nothing in them was darker, but something inside had locked its door. "The bell," she said. "Thad, stand back, palms open." Think about your wife saying your name on a normal day. Oren, think about your mother saying yours. I'll drop, we'll listen to what the ravine does with it. Little brass counterbell, line to wrist. She lowered it into the cut, tapped once. Sound went down and became shape. A second, softer ring came back, a beat late dutiful mimic, pleased with itself. Exactly what she expected, exactly what she didn't want. Another pattern, another shy echo. She drew the bell up. "We back out," she said. "Return at noon with 5 people, a net, and the kind of logic more eyes bring. We don't talk loud about this in kitchens. We don't make it a dare. Mayel will call the mothers who woke sick today and confirm their boys are where they belong. Oren, go to work. Don't walk too close to windows. Keep your head." For 3 hours he tried. Mounted a panel, fixed a ground, listened to the radio gripe about roads, and a woman in the next county who kept a goat in a Subaru all winter. At 11:40, Mayel called. Slowly, no punctuation. Every kid accounted for in Cold Hollow, the next 2 towns, and the next one after that. Only one mother admitted to a bad feeling her college-age daughter had forgotten to text goodnight. The girl replied, at 9, friends dragged her out. "I don't mind being the woman who makes these calls," Mayel added. At noon, Ilsa returned with 3. 2 retired SAR, diehards rope and stubbornness, and a state biologist whose face said, "No time for folklore, polite to people who do." Stokes basket, a sleeping python coil of rope. Thermal scope, rode again, practical commentary only. At the lip, scope warmed, Ilsa panned slow. Pause. A private smile. A frown. 2 small hot spots raccoon. Third signature, doesn't behave. Warmer than air. Not moving, not shaped. Could be a rock remembering yesterday. Could be a hole trying to be a mouth. Could be nothing. Rope went to a jack pine who knew how to hold. Eulalia Pike tied knots like a magician. Holly Kempt tended the tail and told the rope jokes. Ilsa clipped in, checked gloves, looked at Oren. If I say walk, you walk. If I say sing, you sing. If I say back, you're halfway to the fence before I finish the word. Do you understand? Yes. She went over, no hero, just a person who rations courage by the cup. The basket followed, empty. Holly paid out, Eulalia counted. Thad kept palms open. Oren murmured the names again. The wind pressed its shoulder, then backed away, embarrassed. At the plank, Ilsa set her hand on the wood, didn't cross. Leaned, looked. The ravine hummed like a refrigerator in an empty house, steady, unashamed work. Her voice rose, clear without being loud. I see a glove. I see a hair tie. I see a shape that might be a bag or water. Acting clever. No body, no tracks. Mud's wrong. Too smooth for this time of year. Holly net. Down it went. She opened it, set it in the water, drew it slow fishing for a rumor. At the board she made a small sound, what you make when something lands in your hand that wasn't meant for you. A tape, she said. Cassette, labeled with a child's name. Inkbled, not a local surname. First name, maybe. Into a dry bag like a heart, looked left, right, beyond. Bring me up! At Oren's picnic table, Ilsa set the bag down. Holly opened it with thumb and forefinger reverence. The cassette slid onto a towel. Label, 3 stubborn letters. A smear. Another letter, a curl like the start of a V. A backward S someone had tried to fix. We take this to the county, Ilsa said. We don't play it at anybody's table. We don't invite it to speak until we decide who's earned the right to hear. Oren with me. Thad, drive the long way and stop at every porch where a mother is watching the window too much. Say the sentence that helps. Eulalia, Holly, pie at Mayel's. Tell her nothing but that the rope behaved. County building, gray carpet, binder smell. Tape on a clean towel. Evidence tech, Poe Dunnett, a kind face and an anvil name. Step back half a step, then forward. Gentle resurrection deck. Lid down like tucking a child. Play. Hiss. A room trying not to be a room. Boy's voice high, those long rural vowels. Hello, he chirped. To whoever finds this. You're smarter than my uncle. He thought this was a good place to hide it. I thought it was a good place to make him pay attention. Oren's hands went cold. Ilsa folded her arms. Poe watched the deck, not the wall. I learned from the weather radio, the boy went on. 2 notes, then a voice. So here are the 2 notes. A whistle. Almost true. This is a warning for Oren Vale from Cold Hollow. I'll be by your fence tonight to ask for your attention because my uncle didn't give me his. Bring a real adult if you want. Don't bring a recorder. The ravine doesn't like competition. Poe's hand hovered over stop and stopped. Tape wobbled. The voice shrank. In the back, a woman spoke soft, far like another night in another room. The boy laughed. I'm not supposed to laugh here, he said. Click. Out like pinching a flame. 20 counts of silence. Then Ilsa said what needed saying. Someone taught a child to mimic the radio and throw it like a stone. Someone told a story to the wrong head and let that head go walking with it into a night. A tape fell into a ravine where water thinks about voices. Next time, we will not let the water talk first. They worked. Knocked on doors along the ugly highway west of the tract, a trailer. A man who wouldn't answer until Ilsa said please the way a daughter does to a stubborn father. He opened. Saw the tape, covered his face. Made a sound older than apology. Said one name without looking up. Asa had been 12 inches, 2006. His mother believed something that charged interest. His uncle believed in nothing but tricks. Asa memorized the weather radio panel like a prayer, used it for jokes, then defense, then art. He threw his voice into dark to see if the dark would throw it back. It did. One November night, he walked to the ravine to show the dark. He didn't come home. The uncle told no one, managed grief like a secret, called it clever. It was cowardice. They found a hair tie. 2 glove liners. In spring, when the ravine surrendered its slow winter work, a shoe with its lace still tied, and 1 small clean bone. They wrote what the report allowed. No spectacle, no feeding the woods names it hadn't earned. For a week, Oren stood by his fence each night. Didn't call, didn't answer. Stood. Trees did the old work. Wind chose other halls. Once, very late, when the stars dropped their light lower, a voice from somewhere between branch and ground said his name without hunger. Oren, like ticking off a list, he said nothing back, let air, cold, and needles speak over him. Went inside, boots by the door, slept without dreams. That winter, from Route 2, the tract looks like any black wall with silver on it. It is any forest. It will let you in if you bring a good map and let you out if you bring better friends. It will listen to anything you say, repeat very little. If you ever stand on a porch in first snow and something at the tree line uses your name, you'll do what Cold Hollow learned after Oren Vale followed a voice once and decided not to. Again, go inside, put water on with her big. Call the person whose job is rope. Don't teach the night the words daylight will need. There are always voices in woods where wind earns its wages. Some are weather, some are water under ice. Some are branch and bird wearing a rhythm our heads mistake for language because language is the rhythm we gotta reach each other. And some are something else, a debt you pay by sitting still while the professionals work. If you must say anything to the dark, keep it brief and ordinary. Say your street, say your name the way you learned it when you were honest. Then say the one true sentence, Ranger Ilsa Peregrine gave this town to keep like a matchbox in a drawer. We are not answering you, we are not leaving you, we are coming back with more people and better light. The recording that should have never been played. Late September, 2013. Central Kansas. Wheat laid flat by wind that came off the prairie in long, mean sheets. The Sumner County Historical Annex, an old brick co-op turned archive, sat there taking it. Inside, one lamp, one table, one woman. Her name was Vesper Lyle, 38. Precise. The kind of voice you imagine coming off a radio tower at dawn. Archivist on paper, stubborn caretaker in practice. That night she stayed late because the road crew dumped a pallet of boxes from a foreclosed farmhouse north of Caldwell. Ledger books, seed catalogs, Polaroids gone to ghosts. Then the fourth box, wrapped in a green bath towel, gone gray at the edges, a shoebox cassette recorder, handle cracked, church label on the underside, bruised purple from age. Someone had written a name in laundry marker, then crossed it out. Beneath it, a new line in neat hand, East Meridian Baptist, choir room, do not circulate. Vesper did what good archivists do, carded it, numbered it, turned her lamp so the warm circle held the machine like a stage. And then the wind rattled the front door, lightning blew out the entry glass. She reached for the switch, turned, and froze. The play button was down. The reels were crawling. Lazy, stubborn, as if the tape was heavy with whatever it was about to make the room remember. Vesper crossed the floor, pressed stop. The button fought her like it'd been glued in place by time. The reels sighed to a halt. She laughed once, no humor in it, locked the thing in a steel cabinet at her feet, and called dispatch. Torrenhovel answered, midnight voice. She told him about the storm, the boxes, the busted cartwheel. She did not mention the recorder. People who work nights don't invite extra work into a room. At 7:58 p.m., the rain came sideways, overheads dipped, then died. Her lamp fizzled off. The building went aquarium dim under the exit signs. She pulled the flashlight, swung the beam to the cabinet. The door was open. Inside, the play button was down again, the spools moving, barely. A hiss rose, grain by grain. Then the human room hum like heat caught on ribbon decades ago. A woman cleared her throat. Trained voice, hymnal vowels. The room she was in back then held her like warm wood. If you have found this and you are not me, please stop, the woman said. Calm, terribly calm. This is not for you. This is for my own coward heart, to replay until I change. Vesper did not move. Rain hammered, then softened. The voice kept going. My name is Vion Hargris, East Meridian. Thursday evening, late 2003. After choir, the hour when pews stop pretending and exhale. I put this recorder on the piano because I cannot trust myself with eyes. I'm going to say what I have not said. Then I'm going to the parsonage to hang my shame on the doorknob like a wet scarf. I will knock. I will be who I am without apology. I will ask for mercy like it's not a crime in a town this small. A chair creaked. Somewhere inside Vesper's chest, something old sat up and listened. A second voice joined. A man, lower than gossip, higher than thunder. The sound of someone trying not to be heard through a door. Vion. In the way he said her name lived a whole book. I know, she answered. We are not alone. The tape caught a door. A breath of hallway. A new voice, young, not little, leaned into the recorder. Hello, Dax, the man said. What are you doing here? My mother forgot her purse, the kid said. She's in the car, trying not to be angry with you. That sentence weighed more than the storm outside. Vesper thumbed, stop. The button sank a fraction and bounced back. The reels didn't care. They turned. You can take it, Vion told the kid, her kindness like a practiced skill. Second window. Tell your mother I'll drive behind you. Tell her I will come talk. Not long, in a way that matters. Footsteps leaving. Door. Wind gone. The room settling. This is foolish, the man said. His voice dropped half a tone. It's not our job to make the town new. It's our job to keep it from tearing itself apart. It's our job to be honest, she said. Every consonant a lit match. If the choir can sing the truth 3 nights a month, we can do it once. Lightning hit so close the annex shook. The beam hiccuped, the tape thinned, battery dying, and then out of that wobble, one more word. Please. Vesper pressed stop hard. The machine obeyed. The building exhaled. She locked the cabinet and wrote herself a note in block letters. Do not play again. Call Reverend Ardell in the morning. Ask about East Meridian 2003 choir. She tucked it under her thermos lid, swept the flashlight once across the blind faces of 100 yearbooks, missed the cabinet easing open, missed the tired spring choosing itself in the dark. Morning. Sky scrubbed clean. East Meridian Baptist was the color of unsalted crackers. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. Inside, it smelled like old wood, vacuum belts, and a sweetness she couldn't place until she saw 3 chrysanthemums in 3 vases, each like an apology for being bought late in the season. A woman in a blue sweater crossed the aisle with bulletins in both hands. Maria. Short hair you wear after an illness and back. She already knew Vesper's name Reverend Ardell had called, and she already knew the question. Vion Hargress, she said, settling Vesper into a pew. Contralto, you could build a roof on. That year, cut this town open. She helped truth into songs. Truth into Tupperware on your porch. When it wouldn't fit a hymn, she died in the spring. Not all things wait for permission. And the man? Vesper asked, hating herself a little. He left, Maria said softly. That week. Sends coat money at Christmas. Signs from far away. The mother with the purse forgave him once on Maine, and he flinched like she'd thrown a stone. What can a tape do that memory hasn't already done? Vesper thanked her, 2 sleeves touched for a second like a pact between strangers. Back at the annex, she set the recorder on the table and microwaved tea because the air felt wrong. At 1:12 p.m, the bell on the door didn't ring. It just opened. Tall man, Kansas State cap, jacket with 3 past lives. He moved like someone listening for a fire alarm only he could hear. Are you Vesper Lyle? He asked. She nodded. My name is Dax Hemphill. I grew up 6 miles east of East Meridian. My mother used to forget her purse. When she was tired of forgiving people, it gave her a reason to go back and be kind again. I think you have something that once listened to me when I was a boy. How did you know? Vesper asked. I woke at 3, he said. Clock doing that slow blink. Room smelled like hymnals. Heard my name the way it sounded before my voice changed. I don't own a tape player. Something spooled anyway. I remembered a night when a woman's kindness saved a man's job and a boy's faith. That kind of memory doesn't come back unless it's been invited. I think you invited it. She made him tea because that's what slows air. Told him about the recorder, the way it wouldn't stop, the please. He nodded like it fit a sore place he thought he'd hidden. Asked to hear it. She said, no, do not circulate, was written on the object itself. And archivists respect talismans. He asked again, but didn't move closer. The kind of stubborn she trusted. I don't want to hear me, he said. I want to hear her. The breath before she speaks. I want to remember what decency sounds like under bad lighting. Vesper turned the brass key. Lifted the machine with both hands. Wrote a sticky note in plain sight. Hargress permission pending. Listening requested by Dax Hemphill. Then she pressed play. Hiss. Blanket of old air. Vion again, scratch brave. If you are not me, stop. If you will not stop, at least do the kind thing and listen all the way through. I am done being half brave. The machine jumped ahead on its own, like it knew where today needed to land. Back to the 2 voices after the kid left. Tires over road seams. We cannot, he said. We must not. You will kill what mercy they have for me. We can, she said, steadying him by syllable. We must. Do you think the Lord is confused by us? He said her name. She said his. The tape spared the names. Names belong to kitchens and porches, not cassette spools. The room on the tape breathed wood, carpet, a beat-to-death piano, a hymn board with 4 numbers that look like a secret only children can't crack. Then a knock, not on the room's door, on the recorder. A tiny mosquito tap, a fingernail keeping a body from saying a big thing. Dax flinched. Vesper's eyes swept the annex. The annex held its breath, the way a building remembers why it was built, to store dangerous things gently. Vesper didn't stop it. Sometimes kindness is letting a sentence finish. Fine, the man said, with funeral tiredness. Fine, we will be what we are. Names in the paper. Second pew, let the looks do their best and fail. We will put our child, he stumbled, then finished. Our child in the nursery when it cries. We will take turns walking it. We will call my mother and tell her the right story. We'll give your mother the same gift. We will be small for a season, then we will stop being small. The piano wood made a sound like grain turning to meet a new angle of attention. A hand set down. Someone breathed, oh. Static braided tight. Speed slid the way old tape does when a gear hesitates. Vian came back one last time, urgent. If you are me, do not be a coward. If you are not me, do not make this a fable and sell it to yourself. This is not a ghost story. This is how to live. Click. Silence put its palms on everything. Shelves redrew their edges. Pencils remembered their jobs. Outside, the storm was now just damp behind the clouds. Dax covered his face with both hands. Vesper looked at the machine and thought of cellar jars with masking tape dates opened when the garden forgets its name. She hammered stop until stop decided to be true. Then came the work. Permission to request. A call to a woman 3 counties over who still carried the Hargress name and who, when she heard, said she had been waiting for that tape the way Valley people wait for apricots in June. Restrict access. Update the finding aid. Replace the sticky with a letter. And for 1 minute, they let the room have them. Archivist and stranger. Woman and man. 2 people sitting still, while an old backbone straightened inside a machine. Word got out anyway. It always does. Pickups. Break rooms. Space heaters. The story got wrong fast. A curse, a warning, a revival. They said it was a tornado siren played backward. They said if you listened at midnight, you'd hear your name the way only your grandmother said it. They said the recorder had no batteries and played all night. None of that was true. The truth was smaller, harder. The recorder played when lonely people stood too close and forgot to tell themselves the truth in time. In November, Torrin at dispatch heard his name, clean as winter, from the shelf with the lost and found bin. He stood up, said his name back out loud, into a room where another human could hear him, and the sound left the way regret leaves after 2 beers and a nap. He called Vesper. She told him to throw a towel over it, like you darken a bird cage when the bird thinks it's dawn. Reverend Nardell came at 2 on a weekday, when Sun made long rugs on the annex floor. He asked to listen, cried without apology. Told Vesper he hadn't known back then how to keep rooms safe and people brave, and that the 2 were actually the same. He left a check for the leaky gutter. Memo line for roof. Nothing else. What else could you write? Winter sharpened everything. Spring mud had birthdays. Summer made the annex smell like paper and dry lemon peel. Vesper kept working her quiet miracles. She learned what thunder could change and what it could never touch. Late August, the tape did its last trick. It broke. Vesper was there, Dax too. He'd started stopping by, fixing the bad wheel, changing the bulbs nobody's ladder liked, because sometimes people earn comfortable silence after the first hard thing gets said. The machine chewed a loop into its own teeth. Vesper cupped it like a panicked bird. It's okay, she whispered to plastic and time. We've got you. We're listening. She had 3 clean copies made on a professional deck in Wichita. Masking labels, fire-safe box, permissions tucked like seed packets, on each in her sharp hand, to be played with consent only. And under it, softer. Do not use this as weather. On the anniversary of the storm that shoved a box of wrong memories into her life, Vesper sat in the back pew at East Meridian. The building hummed with the quiet electricity of rooms that have been forgiven for what was done in them and what was refused and are willing, finally, to be only rooms again. Maria slid her a peppermint. They didn't say the names they weren't saying. The Hargress family wrote, "Keep it where it's surfaced. Don't let people make a party out of it. Let students hear it who think bravery is always big. Let tired people hear it when they need proof that decency can be made with two hands and one good sentence. Keep the names off. It doesn't need them." There was coffee and cookies in the annex hallway and a microphone that squealed once and then behaved. A reporter asked a trembling question. Vesper answered like someone who refuses to stage a drawing room drama when a kitchen table will do. "We're not here to gossip about the dead," she said. "We're here because a woman recorded who she chose to be and then did it. That's a civic treasure." The recorder sits now in a clear box so people can't love it wrong. On Saturdays, they ask if it plays by itself. Vesper says, "Only when you stand too close and forget you're alive and allowed to speak." Then she hands them a pencil and a form and teaches them how to leave something worth keeping for the next bad night. If you drive east out of Caldwell in late September and the sky bruises again, you might see a single lamp in one window. You might open the door, hear the chime, and breathe a room that smells like paper and patience. You might notice a soft hiss from a machine that retired from magic and kept its dignity. Two people at a table, one with a pencil, one with a small wrench, bent over a ledger. You might understand why the recording should never have been played, and why, since it was, the only right response is to live in a way that won't require another like it. When the rain finally tears free, it will be loud and brief. Gutters will try their best. The annex will settle deeper into its foundation. On a shelf in a locked box, a cassette will keep its peace. And in 100 kitchens and a dozen sanctuaries, voices will go on doing what they were built to do when they belong to bodies willing to be ordinary and brave. They will say, "Please." They will say, "Stop." They will say, "Go now, it's time." And in the smallest, steady way that haunts longer than any ghost, they will say, "We are listening." The door in his basement wasn't there yesterday. Late October, year 2018, West 73rd Street was getting shoved around by that lake wind, long, hard gusts that make whole blocks clench their teeth. Rain ticked the gutters like pinball. Inside a brick duplex that still smelled like plaster dust and stubborn varnish, a 37-year-old hospital electrician named Callum Brenner was doing what he did most nights. Fixing his future with his hands so his head didn't wander. Callum had bought the place in June, ripped up carpet in July, learned the patience of plaster in August. By September, he could ID every pipe by sound. The furnace, original to that era when guys wore hats to breakfast, cleared its throat every evening like an old smoker, then usually behaved. Widowed at 33 by a soft word doctors hate, Callum had decided you can outwork the long hours if you give them a job. His job was this house. A blue notebook on the kitchen counter held the list. Beside it sat a chipped ham radio mug, Coil Me Maybe, that he pretended not to like. He'd been in the basement 100 times. It was a good basement by neighborhood standards. Poured walls, old coal chutes, mortared shut in the 1960s. Work sink with a stain shaped exactly like Michigan. Two doors down there, one cream painted into a porch cubby full of sleeping paint cans, the other a janky plank into a crawl space where the October Mice Union held meetings. He knew both. He'd made peace with both. He had not met the third. At 21:42, after losing an argument with a breaker and eating dinner like a raccoon at the counter, he headed down to relight the pilot. He liked that moment, the polite click, the soft whomp winter delayed by a thumb. He rounded the stair, set his phone on a joist for light, looked up, and stopped, like someone was dimming him instead of flipping him off. There was a door in the west wall. Not a door he must have missed. not boxes stacked weird. He'd scrubbed that concrete in August with vinegar and a bad attitude. It had been wall. Now, it was a door, same in different cream as the other trim mortise latch, casing with the exact roller lint pimples from some distracted owner 3 tenants back. A strip of blue tape was slapped across the brass like a utility tag. It even crunched under his knuckle when he knocked neither hollow nor solid. A hotel of a sound, Callum said it out loud. Because good rooms appreciate honesty. That was not there yesterday. The furnace clicked, caught, and steadied as if proposing a trade. You let me keep one mystery, I'll give you heat. He stared at the tape. It said utility in tiny letters and a number no department in Cleveland uses. Upstairs, he wrote it in the blue book. Wednesday, late October, year 2018, new door, west wall, basement. He made coffee he didn't want. Then he called the one neighbor who knows the right nouns for the wrong problems. Genevieve Trask had worked 30 years in the bus yard parts department. Even her dog, Primitive Pete, followed house rules like a union contract. She'd been on West 73rd since the streetlights still rang like bells when they got swapped to sodium. Callum asked if she'd come tell him whether he'd just lost a fight with his eyes. My pleasure, she said, like someone who's risen for worse. They went down. Jen stood, silent, 10 seconds flat. Then, measuring flour careful. That was not there yesterday. Primitive Pete sat, lifted a paw, set it down. The blue tape didn't peel when Jen tested it. The brass under it was guilty clean, like it had been avoiding hands for months. She put her ear to the wood, jaw loose like a piano tuner. The worst kind of quiet, she said at last. Not a human, not a machine. Something that learned to be polite, living next to both. They left it shut, played a hand of gin upstairs. Jen insisted on losing gracefully. Callum walked her to the gate, watched Pete joy inventory the night, and because tongues check, bad teeth went down for one more look. The thing stayed a thing. In the morning, he called the utility mark line, contract inspections. They'd swing by Thursday unless the wind ate their schedule, and Otho Dwyer, night maintenance at the hospital. Collector of left-handed screwdrivers, saint of simple machines. Otho showed at 1910 carrying a case that looked like it should say violin and didn't. Scope camera. He slid the head between casing and wall. The screen coughed up gray concrete, then darkness with the smoothness of air and the meanness of a throat. Some jokes take too much setup, Otho murmured, brushing the tape with the back of a finger. Tastes like municipal lie. They didn't open it. Otho poured exactly one finger of rye and told the story of an elevator that grew a sense of humor in a humorless building. He left the scope. Callum slept on the sofa because the living room had windows and the basement didn't. He dreamed of blue tape, a polite click, and a nurse's voice saying, "Not yet." Thursday, 14/27. Voicemail from inspections diverted to a sinkhole at Denison. Second voicemail from an unknown number, just silence that didn't know how to hold its breath. Then a whisper from very far down a hall, "Don't come down while the light is wrong." He went home anyway. Top of the stairs, he made the announcement men only make to empty rooms. If you're human, show me your shoes. If you're not, invitation rescinded. The furnace behaved. The sump pump cleared its throat. He set a carpenter's lamp on the floor to make a small, honest city of light, and with a stub of chalk, he drew a line along the bottom of the door. If you can't make sense, you can measure. He knocked once. The sound came back too soft. He pressed his palm to the panel, neither warm nor cold. It felt like skin in a room that doesn't want you to cry. "I don't believe in you enough to be afraid," he said, on purpose lying. Houses respect effort. He turned to leave. On the far side, something trailed a fingertip down the wood from above the latch to below it, very slow, like it was teaching itself grain. He didn't move. The chalk line held. He said his wife's name once, softly, a key to a true door. Friday, 21/15, he and Jen stood there again. Primitive Pete approved the dryer. The tape had a new diagonal crease, like a latch lifted, then politely reset. Jen hovered her hand over it like a candle. You are not the first house on this block to breathe into the wrong room, she said. In 2006, during the epic flood, the city dug out the storm line in the alley and found an old brick run, Prohibition beer, and better stories. They sealed what they could see. They did not seal what refused to admit wanting sealing. That's where the undertalk lives, she said. Not your house's fault it learned the language. Not yours for hearing it. We lean a chair and don't make introductions. Be here at 10 with coffee and a man who likes rules, Callum said. She brought the sheriff. Sheriff Whitaker looked like he still hauled hay for friends. Face built for learning the same story from both sides and deciding where mercy fits. He listened to Callum, to Gen, to Pete, who sneezed once, officially endorsing the facts. Whitaker pressed his ear to the panel. Knocked a pattern. Too slow, pause. Two no one uses unless they suspect a test. The door answered, one slow, three quick like it understood and preferred to show off. We're going to treat this like a person who talks too much and too sweet to a child, Whitaker said. No drama. We don't answer. We call boring people with rope courtesy over magic. At 10:50, Building Inspector Ninette Polk arrived, clipboard, caution tape, and two public works guys who dig with shovels and silent. She measured, tapped the concrete with a screwdriver. Jaw loose, head cocked. Double wall, she said. Face wall. Behind it, not wall. Behind that, not our business yet. The plan, open the outside from the alley, look at it like breakfast. If breakfast looks like sin, you eat elsewhere. By noon, the alley had a careful hole. Brick, then more brick, then a slump of coal pretending it wasn't old. Ninette rolled her light into the throat beam, sliding along clay to a small cleared space. A tin cup, a folded blanket whose corners remembered hands, a stone pile with soot above it, a fire where fire made no sense. We've had squatters, she said. We've had people who didn't choose to be squatters, and we've had tunnels that confuse maps. This is a little of everything. Whitaker braced a gloved hand on the edge, leaned without betting his weight on anything foolish. At dusk, we come with two more bodies and a rope round my waist. We stand in your west room and say hello in a voice that can't hurt anyone. He took his pen and signed the blue tape, 10:16 on a Saturday. No underline, no smiley. Dusk. The wind inhaled and held. 3 across at the bottom of the stairs. The house delivered one timid knock, then, like it decided it needed a new tactic, went silent. Whitaker tied his rope to an old ceiling ring, laundry duty in another life, double knotted. He laid his palm on the tape, talked to the house like a dog flirting with a bad idea. We are not setting our tongues on this latch tonight. They moved the chair, lifted the latch without breaking the tape. The door opened a finger's width on its own resistance. Air came through at the temperature of old apology, coal, and long rain. His shoulder light showed a low brick run, 4 courses high, then a gap all along the top like the mason knew better and got paid by a man who didn't. In the dust beyond, 4 finger marks, evenly spaced. Someone who'd learned to count to 4 and wanted company, and a 5th, shorter one like a tired heart. Whitaker didn't step through. He bent, lowered his head, and said a name to no one, like a midwife teaching an empty room the word it's waiting for. Is anyone here who can stand the sound of their own name? 20 heartbeats, then a cough from the corridor, not brave, not sick, small on purpose. A voice, careful, like someone who only wants to borrow the part of the law that cares more about living than rules. I am hungry. Come into the light then, Whitaker said, measured. No names, no introductions to the dark. A face glanced into the cone, then jerked out. Quick. Private decision. The figure didn't cross. Do you have a sandwich? They asked. Jen started to answer. Whitaker lifted a hand. The room obeyed. We have a sandwich. You may have it on this side. He set it on the brick, stepped back a generous pace. A thin hand took it. Gratitude made of bread and shame filled the small room. I didn't steal the ring, the voice said. The ring was already in here. It's welded to the wall. "We'll speak again in the morning," Whitaker said, as if this were any kitchen, any night. "If you're still here, that would be a blessing." The dark laughed, once surprised at the word blessing. Then, "I'll be here," the rain decided to stay. They closed the door. No chair. Sometimes chairs are theater when you need policy. Sleep came in the way it does when a house tries to grow a new tongue. Morning, the chalk line had a clean nick where the door had opened and closed. The tape now had 2 creases. In the alley, the little camp had a second cup that hadn't been there. On the brick, a note, "Careful hand, fountain pen tidy. Thank you, I won't be here long if you leave it. I know the way that does not ask you to break your rules. I followed voices, and that was my mistake. I am leaving now by the other mouth." Nanette read it, folded once, bagged it, dated it in words events like "this should resist numbers." "Sometimes people want a story," she said. "Sometimes they want a door that says, 'No, we'll build you the second one.'" They hired masons from Ohio City argument-winning walls. A second wall went up in front of the first, tied with rebar that enjoyed its job. They pumped the crawl with flowable fill. Fill is kinder than concrete. Cut a new drain to the alley with the city's blessing, which almost never happens and did. They left the door hung for the sake of the room so a man, mug in hand, a year from now, could touch a latch and remember that fear behaves when it isn't fed. One Sunday in December, after the work and after the lake found its winter voice, Callum stood at the bottom of the stairs, set a sandwich and a thermos on the brick. No speech, no theater, listen. The house was just a house. "You don't get to grow a new door without telling me first," he said, mostly to make the air file the sentence somewhere. Winter settled. Primitive Pete suffered boots. Jen taught Callum to let houses tell their little understories without volunteering his name. Whitaker sent a holiday card with a knot on the front. Otho reclaimed his scope, pretended to be offended at how clean the lens came back. Nanette drove by twice in January to make sure the wall looked like it meant it. In spring, the city found more legacy brick down the alley and filled that too. The report used the word legacy like a period. Every now and then after midnight, wind slides between those houses like a memory that learned to walk. The furnace coughs a sound you could mishear as a polite knock. A man stands in his basement with his palm on a harmless latch and says the names of the people who made a strange night decent: Genoveva, Otho, Ninette, Whitaker, and the name of the woman he loved, because names are keys, and grief is a door you don't open so much as a company. Then he turns out the light. Basements have long jobs. They don't need help from shadows that think they're clever. If you ever buy an old house in a city that keeps secrets under its sidewalks, you might wake up to a door where plaster swore no door would be. You don't owe it curiosity at midnight. You owe it a list, a lamp that won't lie, a neighbor who can make quiet into a tool, and the dull bravery the trades teach. Knock once, count to 20. Call someone with rope, and if a voice on the other side calls your name like it's entitled to it, remember the single sentence that carried an ordinary man and his unremarkable house through a night when the city tried to breathe through his wall. We're not answering, we're not leaving, we're coming back with more people and better light. He moved into a house that wasn't empty. All right, today's story takes place in a quiet Hudson River town, late October 2021. It starts like a normal move-in. It does not stay that way. Rowan Kell is 37, lean, practical, the kind of guy who has carried other people's boxes for years and finally gets to carry his own. He buys a tall, tired Victorian on Wemple Street Widow's Walk, slouching porch, stained glass over the stairs. On paper, the house has been empty for a season. Before that, a retired school librarian lived here. The listing says, charming details. It does not list the other detail. Listings never do. Night 1. The Hudson is dark as melted iron. A freight moans across the bridge. Leaves drag the gutters. Rowan backs a rental truck to the curb, sets a hand on the rail, and feels old paint give. Inside smells like dust and lemon oil. The floor has that note old houses sing when they map where feet prefer to travel. He makes a bed, sort of. Cooks eggs in his grandmother's pan, eats by the open kitchen door. To the west, wind chimes arguing with themselves. To the east, a radio playing Old Soul so quietly it feels like someone pacing a kitchen. 11:48, he takes the trash to the alley, inhales the cold. A cat posts up at the fence like a bouncer. He laughs, goes in, deadbolt, chain, lights off except a small lamp in the front parlor. 12:17. From the kitchen, a drawer opens, wood on wood, soft, then closes. He's not asleep, he's in that new house mode where your brain catalogs every sound like pop quiz questions. The drawer again, same speed, same breath. A single spoon ticks the divider, like a hand lifted it, weighed it, set it back. Rowan breathes, runs the script. Houses settle, pipes rehearse, mice sound huge at night. He pads in on cold boards. Every drawer is flush. The counter is polite and empty. Moonlight makes a pale square on the table. He opens the top drawer and shuts it, imitating the sound. Okay, brain, there you go. He puts water on for tea because people who aren't afraid make tea at midnight and that's when he sees it. On the pantry door, shoulder height, a little wax circle, a fingertip habit mark. Years of touch, wiped and redrawn. Not fresh, not ancient, just used. Morning is chores, locks, heat, chimney. The locksmith, Nate, admires the old brass and swaps the cylinder. A neighbor shows up with a casserole wrapped in a cherry towel. Her name's Avril Peak. She bakes when weather thinks too hard. She mentions the librarian kept hours you could set a watch by and casually says, if the attic fusses after midnight, check radiators before raccoons. These old girls bang. After lunch, the house tells him a secret. In the coat closet, his elbow finds a seam. He presses. A narrow panel sighs open steep servant steps between pantry and the back corner upstairs. He shuts it, opens it again, because that's what you do when a wall suddenly becomes a door and dusts the threshold to see if anything uses it later. That night, the river breathes colder. He writes a list at the kitchen table. 12:20. Toothbrush in his mouth. The dumbwaiter slides 2 inches and stops. Rope creaks, goes still. He watches the pantry door in the mirror until the fog clears. 1:44, he wakes to the smell of toast. The toaster is unplugged. He quietly laughs at himself and rolls over. Day 3. Riverwalk, hardware store, Goodwill drop. He returns at 4 and through the frosted front glass sees a shaped shoulder, hand step back. He enters slow. The air smells faintly of lilac drawer sachets. On the entry table, a small tissue bundle. Inside, a brass key, smooth as a worry stone, stamped with a single letter B and a scratched number 1. Not one of his. In the kitchen, a thin line of flour has moved, like a cup was set and lifted. A cup is clean, drying on the towel. In the pantry, the dumbwaiter rope quivers and stills. At the back stair threshold where he dusted, half moon prints. Not boots, not bare, soft sole, small or careful. Rowan opens the closet panel and speaks into that narrow dark, calm. I own this house. I move slow. I don't throw people away. If you're real and you want to stay real, tell me your name. He hears a decision being made. A scuff at the top. A pause on the third tread. That small, quick run we all do to pretend we're not afraid. She appears on the last step. Late 50s, hair pinned, cardigan mended, with proud little stitches, wool socks in tired slippers. Her eyes scan, land on his, and choose honesty. I'm Imre Blakely. I looked after Miss Renner for a year and a half after the snow that broke her hip. I stayed after the service because the realtor kept telling me the date and I couldn't hear it. The pantry door knows me. The back stair knows me. I didn't mean to startle you. I made tea because a house should know the sound. Whatever speech Rowan thought he'd give, gone. He says the one true sentence he has. I wondered if the dumbwaiter was flirting with me. Imre almost smiles. The key? Service key, she says. Miss Renner gave it to me when the ramp went in. I hid it under the flour tin because I hide important things in unimportant places. You were at the river. I set it out when I heard you would fit your own name here. Rowan. That's a name that can learn a house. They move to the kitchen like two people agreeing not to break anything. In better light, he sees her cardigan buttons are all wrong sizes, her amber ring chipped smooth by years, and her hands jar-opening hands. She apologizes for the flour. She baked biscuits yesterday because the house woke up hungry. There are 3 in a tin, second shelf. She's not a thief. Then I owe you butter, he says, and the kettle, which has been placed cold on a burner out of habit, gets clicked on for real. Over tea, she gives him the owner's manual, no inspector rights, where radiators bang after rain, how the pantry hinge forgives more quickly if you hum, wax the dumbwaiter rope in November, scold it in July. The cellar light needs 2 breaths to remember it's a light. The center post should have been replaced 20 years ago. The house forgives it monthly. The drawer, top right, always slides back a spoon's width. Miss Renner kept a rubber band there because elastic keeps secrets better than a latch. The sound he heard was the spoon settling. The house was pointing at the elastic. Imri stands. I'm in your way. I meant to say goodbye and got embarrassed. I'll leave by the back stair. I'll leave the key. If the pipes talk too much, call. Rowan surprises them both. Stay for supper. Averill brought a casserole. I repay towns by eating what they hand me. They eat coats on because the heat schedule's still formal. Imri tells small, dignified stories. Miss Renner sang morning hymns without believing because habit and comfort share a coat. The back bedroom, under the little eave, wakes early on snow days. Whoever sleeps there will always beat the plow to the first cup. The cast iron sink has a comma-shaped chip, permission to keep going when a sentence seems finished. Before she leaves, Imri asks for a plain blessing. Not church, just something to keep people from sharpening themselves on the wrong edges. She closes her eyes, breathes once, and says to the floorboards, "We will act like neighbors, even when we don't believe in that word. We will be dull when the house asks us to be dull. We will answer with our bodies only when we are sure our names will be kept. We will not talk to empty rooms about the wrong things, not after dark." The panel closes on her shoulder. The quiet that follows feels chosen, not imposed. Rowan drops the service key in a little dish by the door. Tools like to know where they live. Weeks pass. He learns the wall of stained glass catches fire at a certain hour. He files a note with the county to acknowledge the back stair and the title. Some arrangements need paper when a house changes names. He returns Averill's towel with a loaf of something he hopes counts as baking. Sometimes he finds signs of Imri that aren't mistakes. A box of matches where there weren't any, a clean cloth folded where he'd left a crumpled one, a tidy list on the underside of a pantry shelf, wax rope, check lint trap, tuck draft snake. He writes thank you in the margin with a dull pencil. Late November, Averill appears with a county inspector who measures politely and asks the best question a bureaucrat can ask. Does this panel count as a door or a hatch? Rowan says it counts as a secret that deserves to be acknowledged. The inspector actually writes that down. That night, the wind returns with a dry old paper hand. Far on the river, a horn pulls a long, low goodbye that never is. At 1:44 in the Eve bedroom, Rowan wakes and listens. Radiator tap, dumbwaiter's shy inch, the spoon's little settle, a jar lid pop like someone forgot to loosen it. He smiles into the dark and whispers the rule he's learned here. Not answering. Not tonight. In December, the first snow is generous. Rowan learns to broom the steps like porchmen do, always pushing to the same drift, so it learns its place. Imri leaves a cream card with her new address. Basement studio, window facing a black walnut, part-time job at the county historical typing ledgers, saying names out loud so they don't think they're finished. She asks one favor. There's a trunk in the attic. Miss Renner's aunt, Minta Thorne, kept a diary for 50 years, careful and mean in the best way. The family would like the trunk if it can come down without swearing at the rafters. They climb the front stairs on purpose. The attic opens with paint stick reluctance, then generosity. Boxes are labeled in a librarian's hand, winter scarves, not this one, photographs, country cousins, bird journals, 1980 to 2010. The trunk waits under the peak leather straps, tack heads like stars. They don't open it. Not yet. They carry it down between them one step at a time, like moving a sleeping parent. It rests on folded towels in the hall overnight because old things deserve a chance to decide to be seen again. Next day, the niece Lorna Vetch arrives with grocery tulips and a cake. In the parlor light, they lift out muslin-wrapped books, a cloth bag of buttons, a county fair postcard for a totally average pie that still won a ribbon, a small silver bell on frayed red ribbon, and 3 glass marbles that for no reason never lost their shine. They leave the bell and the marbles. The books go with Lorna. She cries. No one apologizes. Imre thanks the air and without looking at Rowan, squeezes his forearm. This house could have eaten the trunk. You didn't let it. The town weaves itself in. Lux Odea, the sash guy, fixes a window in exchange for shelves and a long story about a boat. Avril brings a pie when the weatherman says icy mix. Sometimes Imre knocks at the front, sometimes she ghosts the back stair. Either way, she says hello like joining a sentence, not starting one. January. A title office woman arrives, shivering with a folder. We're filing a small correction. Our system dislikes a door inside a closet. We're trying to teach it manners. She looks past him once, homesick, and says, My mother used to tell me, the walls aren't thin, honey. The walls listen. Be boring on purpose. See how long the trouble lasts. By March, the house is ordinary, which, if you've ever lived with an old place, means dear. At 1:44, the kitchen makes the spoon sound and then doesn't. He doesn't get up. He thinks about that first night and his urgent need to explain things. He thinks about the word empty and realizes it's never been fair to rooms or to people. He thinks about the service key in its dish, the wax circle on the pantry door, the trunk asleep in another house now, and the sentence that has started living under his tongue, we are boring on purpose when the house asks us to be. Spring loosens the river's shoulder, sycamores light up pale green, windows remember they have hinges. On a Saturday in late April, he hosts a small dinner. Avril, Lux, Imre, Lorna. The stained glass holds a sunbeam like a jewel you don't have to own to admire. They eat food that doesn't try too hard. Say names. Avoid lazy. How's work? When the dumbwaiter creaks, everyone notices and then lets it be. That's what families do for the oldest relative in the room. Night falls. Dishes done. Leftovers sent home. Rowan stands in the hall, touches the pantry with the back of his fingers. The wax circle is nearly rubbed away, worn down by his own small reverence. He clicks the chain, turns the deadbolt, sets the kettle just to tell the house what time it is. From the back stair, a single tread answers. Not a knock, not a warning, just wood on wood. Patience. A place teaching a person to hear the difference. Rowan doesn't ask who, he doesn't answer. He folds the cherry print towel and tucks it in the drawer where elastic lives. He breathes in, breathes out. The night listens back, and it does not feel empty at all. The park ranger who found something he shouldn't have. In 2019, on a wind-bitten Wednesday in late February, deep in the Texas desert where the land is so wide it makes your chest feel small, a park ranger found something he was never supposed to find. It did not glow, it did not scream, it just hummed soft enough to doubt, old enough to be dangerous, and patient enough to wait 40 years for the right set of hands. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Big Bend National Park wears weather like a personality. That morning, the sky was the color of porcelain right before a storm, and the first wind rolled over the flats like a bad thought, hard, dry, and full of grit. The Chisos Mountains sat on the horizon like a deep bruise. Somewhere far off, a diesel engine turned in its sleep. A red-tailed hawk hung motionless over the river road, and the river itself stayed out of sight, the way a secret keeps itself out of your mouth. Not gone, just waiting. Keir Halden had the early shift. He pulled his green and white truck off a rough two-track and killed the engine. He left the last mechanical sound of the day right there in the silence and listened. Ravens argued along a basalt spine. The wind combed the sodal. He checked the radio, clipped to his vest, and patted the small pouch he carried, tourniquet, foil blanket, a roll of hard candy he never ate. He had been a ranger long enough that the ritual no longer felt like superstition. It felt like showing up. Dispatch came thin, the way winter voices do when they travel far. Calm as coffee. It was Juniper Voss. She gave him the entire morning in 3 sentences. 1. A couple was overdue on the Outer Mountain Loop, slow but stubborn, last seen at dawn yesterday. 2. Border Patrol wanted eyes on a footpath out near the Santa Elena sector, something about boot prints clipping along with deer tracks. 3. The odd thing. An alarm squawked from an old USGS box no one had keyed in for years. The unit was the kind that used to sunbathe on a little solar panel and gossip to Washington about rainfall or tiny quakes or numbers that made people in ties feel like they understood the desert. Not a priority. Just weird. Copy your list, Keir said. I'll check the footpath first, then swing by the USGS thing if light holds. Keep the overdue loop hikers in my pocket. If they hit a wall, they'll beg your radio before noon. Juniper warmed. Appreciate it, Keir. Una's in Panther Junction, and she's listening. She wants a call the second that antique turns out to be anything other than a rattlesnake condo. Also, hold on to your hat. This wind eats. My hat and I have an agreement, he said, smiling into the windshield. Then he shifted into 4 high and idled the last 1/8 of a mile. Ocotillo leaned like fishing poles in a dream. The ground changed under his tires, hard pan to sugar, sand to flint. He stopped where a shallow arroyo opened its mouth and stepped into a moving silence, the kind that lifts sound off you in strips. The sun hit his cheek like a warm coin. The footpath wasn't a path so much as a set of habits worn into the land. One moment it disappeared, the next it returned. As if embarrassed, he followed it by the rules all animals obey. Where a coyote would choose shade, the prince chose shade. Where the wash cut deep, the traveler stepped high along the bank, then drifted back down. Keir could read height in the length of a stride, weight in the heel bite, worry in the way a left foot trusted soil more than the right. The tracks cut south and west. Not his business, unless the story moved too close to paperwork. He gave the arroyo an honest hour, then turned toward a low ridge where the old stone shows its hand. The USGS unit sat where Juniper said it would, half hidden in shin oak, a dust-colored box with a turtle-back lid circled by a ring of rocks meant to keep cattle from testing it. A ground rod poked up like a silver reed. A cable that should have run panel to sensor lay severed and curled in a small defeated loop. Everything about the box said one word: old. The agency badge on the lid was sunburned down to a ghost. Keir crouched and touched the lock. It had been cut once in some other decade, replaced with a newer hasp, then left alone. He had bolt cutters in the truck. He also had a phone and a supervisor whose caution had kept more people alive than anyone would ever be able to count. He radioed Una Ketteridge and reported only the facts, no adjectives. Feels like a history lesson, Una said. But it pinged the system. Could be a dead battery hiccup, could be a bored cow, could be a deer with opinions. Use your judgment. If you cut it, I want eyes on whatever you see. On the walk back to the truck, the wind had put on a better shirt. It had shoulders. He returned with the cutters, braced the box between his knees the way you steady a barrel, and bit through the hasp in one clean press. The lid lifted, reluctantly, seal hiss, a sigh. Inside, a spray of sand and a neat gray well. At the bottom, dry as the moon, sat a metal cylinder the size of a coffee can strapped in place. A conduit ran out of sight underground, snug, official. On the cylinder, a hand-etched label slept under yellowed tape. Lechuguilla Array, Node C, date July 1976. Kier didn't say anything out loud. Lechuguilla is a cave in New Mexico, days to the north, in a world underground, but the word tastes like limestone and men with carbide lamps. He snapped a photo, sent it to Una, and waited. The wind set a hand on the oaks and took it back. Una returned with a name, Harlan Sevier, at USGS. He says that's a shock sensor, not seismic. They use them at the tail end of certain tests to see if anything rattled. He also says if you'll be a saint and bring the cylinder here, their archivist will buy him dinner if it's got the word Lechuguilla on it. Happy to fund your steak, Kier said. One more look before I break the strap. He slid a hand along the cylinder. The metal felt cool, as if the sun hadn't mattered to it. His fingertips found a folded paper tucked under the strap. He pinched it free. A field, tag time, weather, who to blame. The ink had softened but held. The name on the tag wasn't one he knew. Ivar Cade. Below the name, replace node C if hum persists. Call Rourke. Kier sent a photo of the tag. This time, Una took longer to answer. When she did, her tone changed the temperature of the room he was standing in. Rourke Delmont used to be a deputy in Terlingua, she said, retired to a house outside Marathon with too many cats and a ham radio. If his number still exists, Juniper will find it under the paper nobody ever looks under. Bring the cylinder. I'll have Juniper patch you through when she digs him out. Before lifting the cylinder, Kier did one more thing. He leaned down, put his ear near the well, and held his breath the way EMT school teaches you to make a room go quiet. He heard exactly what anyone would expect to hear. Nothing. Or, if you wanted to be honest with yourself, the faintest, straightest suggestion of something metallic remembering its job. Not a sound you could brag about, not even a sound you could swear to. Still, he felt it the way you feel, a draft in a closed house. He wrapped the cylinder in a blanket and set it behind the truck seat. The wind decided they were partners now. On the drive to Panther Junction, he kept his hands loose on the wheel while his brain ran two lanes, one labeled hikers, one labeled hum. The radio whispered, then cleared. Juniper. And then another voice riding in on her line, dry, amused, patient, like a man people invite to funerals because he won't make it about himself. You found something that used to pay my salary, the man said. Rourke Delmont, please tell me you didn't open anything that says do not open. I don't drive after lunch. Kier told him the story from the top. Rourke told one back. It started in the 1970s when men wore ties into the field and ended when people stopped writing months out longhand. The short version, at the end of a certain era, a few hush-hush pieces of gear got planted in places they didn't belong and then forgotten when one team assumed another team would clean up. It wasn't sinister, it was human. Drawers are easier to open than to close. Ivar Cade, Rourke said, trying the name on his tongue. He was a tinkerer, listened to ground like it had opinions. He had this thing about humming. Said if a box hums, you treat it like a street dog, no sudden moves. Stop when it stops. Sounds like his note. If you get that cylinder into your office and crack it, and something inside looks like it wants to be played on an old machine, call me back and let me be foolish one more time. I promise, Kier said, because men who talk like Rourke do not ask for many promises. Panther Junction did its lunch hour ballet as Kier rolled in. High schoolers in borrowed hats argued about which loop had a better spring. A sunburned couple congratulated themselves for picking the Vista Trail instead of the tree trail. Una met Kier at the side door and walked him down the coffee and dust hallway to a small room she called the museum, because if she didn't love it, it would have become a closet. The cylinder went on a table cleared of maps that had been retired by someone who refused to admit it. They did it by the book. Photos first, as if the object had a lawyer. Gloves next. The strap had baked into one long sigh. It gave when asked. Under the lid was not a riddle. It was a spool of quarter-inch tape, wound neat, the kind that used to carry voices and now mostly carries nostalgia. Una didn't rout politely. Rourke, it's your foolish day. He promised 15 minutes and made it in 12. He looked like the part of Texas that doesn't apologize, pearl snap shirt, jaw that only meets a barber when forced. He carried his machine under his arm like a hymn book someone kept by the bed. He set it on the table with gentle authority. I kept one, he said, in case my cousin wants to hear his band from 1983 and pretend it matters. Let's hope the belts haven't turned to spaghetti. They threaded the tape, slow, careful. The tape looked good. Old, yes, but not brittle. Una closed the smoked lid with both hands. Rourke pressed play. The machine thought, then did the thing it was born to do. Sound came. Not music. Space. The kind of wind you only hear inside a square room where corners argue. Beneath the wind, metal ticked, cooling, settling. A voice tested a frequency and lost interest. Silence held its breath too long and then broke in two. A different voice, young, certain read a time and a barometric pressure, and then ducked his head like he was embarrassed. Minutes walked by and refused to hurry. Keir forgot he was standing. Una leaned without leaning. Juniper appeared in the doorway and didn't cross it. Around minute 11 or 12, voices started coming in more often, short barks of men in sun stupor. They tossed numbers back and forth. Then the numbers stopped, and something in the room with them tried to take the speaking away. Do you hear that? The young voice said, pleased and uneasy at the same time. That's the hum. It's not in the wires. It's under me. Rourke leaned in. The belts made a private adjustment. A long, thin sound slid up under everything like someone dragging the flat of a blade across piano wire. You could hear the tape hesitate, then pull itself together and keep going. There was more jokes about coffee that wasn't a man saying lunch like it was a destination. The young, certain voice, again, not yet, and later, now. At the very end, after the leader flapped and the machine hiccuped, there came 3 small knocks. Tap, tap, tap. Could have been anything, metal cooling, a knee against a table leg, but the kind of anything that sticks. No one spoke for a while after the reel stopped. Una found 2 mugs. Juniper poured from the thermos she kept for not really emergencies. Rourke lifted the spool with both hands like it was a plate his grandmother would notice if he chipped. What exactly did we just hear? Juniper asked finally, not demanding an answer. Somebody hitting the sensor lid? A can rolling across the floor? Why do 3 little taps make 3 people look at each other like we just heard a prayer said backwards? Rourke answered the tape. If Cade wrote that tag, and if the wind outside doesn't mind me being honest, I'd guess he heard something he decided was not wind, not gear, and not cattle. If he thought it was a hum, he would do what he always preached. He'd keep his mouth shut, he'd count. He'd refuse to answer. He taught me that when we worked a roadside call box that wouldn't stop ringing on its own. Juniper smirked a little. Do we have to file a report that uses the word haunting? We have to file one that uses the word found, Una said. Maybe returned. Anything else lives with time. The day pushed back into its chores. Rourke took the tape to his truck and swore he wouldn't play it for anyone who owed him money. Keir signed the chain of custody with a flourish just exaggerated enough for Juniper to roll her eyes and accuse him of showing off. Then he stepped back into a heat that had moved 1 shade higher. He still had the overdue hikers in his pocket. The river would throw a cold ribbon across their route. The front would stand up and try again by dawn. 2 hours later, he found them under a cottonwood, unhurt and mad at themselves, like all healthy overdues. The man's name was Corliss. which made Keir like him for no reason. The woman's name was Mylene, which made him like her for matching. They had underestimated the sun for the 500th time in human history. Keir gave them water, changed the rhythm of his sentences so they could cover their pride, and walked them back with a conversation about birds that let everyone keep the day. By the time he signed off from Juniper, the sky had turned the color of a bruise willing to heal. He drove to his little place outside Study Butte and sat on the step with his off-duty radio, playing a baseball score under a song. An insect flung itself against the porch light, learned nothing, and decided to live anyway. Keir set his boots side by side because the day deserved it. He slept hard and dreamless. Morning came with a sound like someone riffling a fat book. The front finally threw itself across the basin. His phone buzzed at 6. Una. Rourke had gone home, changed his shirt, then changed his mind, and gone to Marathon to pick a fight with the archives. He found Ivar Cade's obituary. 2 lines and a date. 2006. Loved the desert. Survived by nobody. Not the same as alone, but close enough on paper. What followed was a day of strange chores that make up the secret half of a park ranger's job. A woman dropped her keys into a pit toilet at Rio Grande Village, and Keir recovered them with a coat hanger and a moral crisis. A Mexican Jay picked not 1 but 2 sandwiches off a truck bed and strutted into a mesquite. A man cornered Keir at a trailhead to ask, with pure sincerity, where the dinosaurs sleep at night. By late afternoon, the front was empty and the air could remember how to be clean again. Without planning it, Keir's truck found the 2-track, then the ridge. He didn't expect the stand of oaks to look guilty. He didn't expect to kneel beside the empty USGS box and feel right behind his breastbone the desert's particular permission, the one that says you can stay if you keep your voice small. He put a palm on the metal and counted to 10 without breathing. Then he exhaled and counted to 10 again. A raven landed behind him and made a single rude comment. Keir laughed, surprised by his own sound, and turned as if he'd given his back to the wrong thing. The raven hopped, decided the joke had landed, and went back to its schedule. Keir wiped his palms on his pants and told the box out loud that it was not an afterthought. Then he walked back to his truck. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 miles down the road, the radio jumped in a way that made Keir grab the volume out of pure goodwill. Juniper again, voice controlled, verbs undecided. Bringing you an incoming, she said. I have a caller listening to an old field tape on a machine in his truck. He would like you to meet him at mile marker 23 on the Marathon Road and decide if he should stop. He says please twice. I believe it's Rourke Delmont. On my way, Keir said, because you don't let a good man have an embarrassment alone on asphalt. Rourke's truck waited on the shoulder like a patient mule. Driver door open. The little tape machine sitting on the seat where a person would be. The reels turned greedily. They didn't ask for much, just power and a little faith. Rourke kept one hand near the brake lever and the other on the wheel, like he might have to drive the whole arrangement away from something you can't swerve around. It's nothing, he said as Keir approached. Wind in a different hat. Men I used to be, saying numbers the way sunburned men do. And yet, listen to the part that pretends it's not there. They listened. Under the wind, not behind it, like a floorboard under a rug, a low line had begun. To call it a note would suggest it had manners. It didn't. It was a long idea someone forgot to end. Even the machine grew cautious, as if its belts could feel the shape of the room that tape had once been in. On the recording, the young voice spoke again. Careful this time, do not answer it. If it chooses a rhythm, let it be a rhythm without you. Rourke clicked stop with his knuckle. The truck filled back up with honest air and the faint smell of old foam. He was a crank, Rourke said with affection. Cade. He liked to say there are only 2 kinds of people under the sky. The ones who answer first, and the ones who listen first. Then he'd pick which one to be like he was changing shirts. He loved seeing what the world would do if he made it take the second move. Why here? Keir asked. Because I'm old, Rourke said, and I'm practicing telling a story to the place it happened. So Keir let an old man stand with his truck and his tape and his empty road and practice, while the light thinned and the Ocatilla leaned into evening. The next week, life returned to practical. A coyote watched Keir eat his sandwich and didn't complain when he got none. A bus full of fourth graders sang a prickly pear song until their teacher begged mercy. The tape traveled to Fort Collins in a box with 3 labels and enough bubble wrap to outlive all of them. Harlan Sevier wrote an email full of thank yous and jargon that made gardening sound attractive. Una allowed the museum to be a museum for 1 more hour. Juniper added a sticky note to her console that said, hum in tidy pen. She said it was a reminder. Nobody argued. Spring showed up like a kindness you don't deserve, but take anyway. Wildflowers did their loud, brief job. The river had just enough weight to trick children into thinking it was permanent. Keir took 2 days in a cabin near Terlingua and practiced being nobody. He woke once with a name in his mouth that wasn't his and laughed at the rafters for the body's weird tricks when the mind is too full of story. Late April brought a letter to Panther Junction on paper that believed in itself. Una slid it open with a pocket knife just because it's always fun. Ione Greathouse, archivist, wrote in a tone you'd expect from someone who can't believe she's paid to do what she loves. Thank you for the cylinder, thank you for the tape. They had duplicated it and cleaned it until someone might mistake it for modern, though its real value was in the fact that it wasn't. As for the hum, it did not exist in the tape as a measurable frequency. It existed as a missing one, a hole where numbers stopped trying to be numbers and then remembered themselves. The packet included a transcript with timestamps and that one line that still put a chill on the back of everyone's neck. Do not answer it. Keir read the whole packet at his little table by his one window. He read it slowly, the way you set out water for an animal you hope will trust you. Then he called Rourke and offered to drive up. Bring limes, Rourke said. I'll bring something that burns properly. They sat on Rourke's porch while the cats did criminal things around their boots. What did we find? Keir asked the dark. He wasn't asking for nouns. Rourke lifted his glass, set it down. Proof of boring bravery, he said. Men in a small room under a big sky who decided not to be interesting in the wrong way. They heard a thing they couldn't own, named it hum, counted it, refused to answer, ate lunch, and went home. Then they left us a spool no one cared about until a winter wind told it to wake up. A train with no business being that close laid a ghost horn over Marathon and moved on. Cats faced the horizon like it owed them. The stars did what they always do after weather, brag. The next morning, Keir stopped by the museum. The empty cylinder sat on a shelf at eye level. The card below it said the simplest possible thing. Found near oak, returned to desk. The rest lived between the wind and anyone willing to lean close. On a Friday in May, when tourists arrive like convoys and the park gets louder on the surface and quieter underneath, Keir hiked up a dry wash and saw 3 small round marks pressed into dust on a flat rock in the shade. He touched one lightly with the back of his middle finger. The way you test a skillet you don't trust. The marks were fresh. They could have been made by a walking stick. They could have been made by the end of a tape case. They could have been made by a raven being too literal. He took a picture anyway. Then he wiped the rock clean and laughed at himself, because the rock did not mind and did not notice. That night he called his sister in New Hampshire to hear how her voice could make heat talk about snow. He told her a version of the story with the precious parts swapped out for ones that wouldn't. She said she loved that he had a job where silence came with rules. He said he loved that she had a job where noise had neighbors. They hung up like families do when there is more to say and no hurry to say it. Summer leaned in, heat stacked on heat. Tourists tried to buy wisdom by buying bigger hats. The monsoon teased, then teased again, then finally did the decent thing and broke on the mountains, letting Cactus drink for real. Keir learned one more part of the park and then another, then deliberately forgot the exact shape of the gray cylinder, so that if it ever wanted to remember itself to him, it would have to do it honestly. He never heard the hum again. He wasn't disappointed. The desert does not owe encores. He heard the small faithful noises that make this place a sentence you can live. In quail cubbies rustling like loose paper, the groan of a truck asked to be patient, a woman laughing in a campground when a child said the stars were a spill. He filed 2 reports that month that used the word found and did not once use the word weird, which felt like progress. Now and then, on a long stretch between somewhere and nowhere, Keir would thumb the radio and ask Juniper the only question you ask a dispatcher who has saved you from your own hurry more times than either of you can tally. What's your world tonight? And she would read a list that wasn't a list flat tire near Terlingua, a man who locked his keys in his canoe, a long-haul driver whose wife had a baby while he sat on the shoulder crying and not caring who saw. That's the net holding up the desert. Not ropes, voices. When autumn returned with its clean knife, Juniper added a second sticky note by her console, not to replace the first, but to keep it company. 3 words. Do not answer. She said it was a reminder. Keir said it was a sermon. Una called it practical and wrote a procedure memo that future rangers would roll their eyes at and then follow anyway. Early December. Cold morning. Keir drove out to the ridge where the oaks keep their small green and parked, facing the wind that once crawled under his shirt. He walked to the empty box, set his hand on the rim, and spoke the way a man talks to a stone when no one is looking. He hoped whoever had listened first had wandered off to a place with shade and water and endless lunches. He said 3 names: Ivar Cade, Rourke Delmont, Juniper Voss. The wind moved over the far country with slow hands, and Keir felt the small truth that keeps a person working in a hard place. Sometimes finding what you should not have found teaches you how to leave it exactly where it belongs and how to carry it forward in your mouth without letting it borrow your name. On the drive back, a roadrunner cut across his bumper with the cheerful felony of a thief who knows the law. Keir laughed out loud, and the day liked him for it. At the junction, he signed for a parcel of new trail signs and accepted a slice of pumpkin bread from a volunteer in a vest covered in pins. Una raised a hand in the hallway and, without slowing, told him to go home and let the evening keep itself for once. He said he might. That night, as the first hard cold settled across the park, as the river crouched and the coyotes traded minutes on the microphone of darkness, as Juniper's voice crossed and recrossed other voices in the net that keeps the desert patient, Keir sat on his porch with the lights off and listened to the nothing that is never nothing out here. He set his palms flat on the wood. He let the day lift like steam. When a small breeze passed his ear, he did what the wise do in rooms where something asks to be answered. He counted to 10, then to 10 again. And because he knows the difference between bravery and good sense, he did the hardest, bravest thing he could do. He said nothing at all. The missing campers were never alone. Today's story takes place in Idaho's Salmon Chalice backcountry. Late September 2018. 2 campers vanish near an old fire lookout. Search teams go in, radios crackle, dogs work. Then a voice in the timber starts saying one of their names. And the rule out there, the one they don't put on maps, is simple. If a voice calls your name and there isn't a mouth you can see, you don't answer. Sunday night. Rain falling in thin ropes, polite but insistent. The granite smells like a coin. Weekend traffic bleeds east. In Shoup, the cafe lights go down. The river keeps its sentence. On the 3rd floor of the county building in Salmon, under humming fluorescence, dispatcher Kaya Merritt settles a headset and sips from a chipped mug. 41, good at hearing the difference between wind on a mic and fear in a throat. At 21:47, the primary line rings a childlike rhythm. Kaya picks up a careful male voice. I need to report 2 overdue campers, my cousins. I'm next to their truck at the Loon Creek turnoff. The camp host told me to call before I get brave. Kaya goes methodical. Names: Ivor Doss, 42. Lena Doss, 38. Boise people. Left yesterday with a light kit and ridiculous amount of jerky. Destination, ridge by the old Jarvie lookout. They brought a radio. They also brought stubbornness. Stay with the truck, Kaya says. Do not step into timber. Coordinates go into the form twice, clean. Deputy Roland Knapp, 39, a face that makes people tell the truth by accident, drops a cup of stew and starts his hour-long drive. Ranger Nick Salcedo checks in from a cabin near Panther Creek. Patient voice. Knows where people make their first wrong decision. By 2240, red and blue lights lay themselves across wet trunks at Loon Creek. The blue Ford is locked. A map inside is soaked, still readable in a bleeding wet. Camp host materializes. The pair planned the ridge, backed in for an early exit. Rain's coming, he'd warned. Rain brings the air alive, they'd said. Nick slides the map onto the tailgate. A penciled circle on the ridge. A dotted line up the wrong drainage, then corrected like a man who doesn't like admitting guesses. Beside the circle, Lena's neat list. Stove, coffee, headlamp, prayer. Time matters, Nick says. No volunteer conga line onto wet granite at midnight. Cousin stays with the deputy. We do this steady. At 1, they find the camp the way you sometimes do. Ghost of a new fire ring, a tiny cairn somebody couldn't resist. A boot print Rain is trying to steal. 2 sets. Walking together. Roland Marks calls it brings them back. Morning plan gets written like an anchor. Kaya works the night like a loom. Tracks down Lena's sister in Meridian, leaves a message that is compassion twice and panic never. Calls in a K-9 team ode to the county. In her log, she writes 5 quiet words only she will see. Do not answer a name. Dawn. Cloud lifts, leaving diamonds on every needle. 15 people drink black coffee at a folding table. Nix runs a finger over the map and splits the country into sectors. He adds the rule, the one you only hear from people who have earned your trust. If you hear a name and there's no visible mouth, lock eyes with your buddy, say their name, make them say yours. Do not answer anything from timber, not even if it uses your song. A new kid raises a hand. Is that folklore or a line I can put in a report? It's how you get home for lunch, Nix says. Teams move out with that respectful, quiet September pines demand. Dogs in bright vests quarter the slope. One line takes the spine, another slides into a black burn, snags like busted metronomes. Thayer, the cousin who made the call, walks with Deputy Knapp, not because he should, but because men who wait at trucks break in slow ways. At 9:19, a dog gives a small bark. I found your idea, not yet your person. Handler Ione Taggart slips among ferns and retrieves a rolled shirt under a low lodgepole limb. Damp collar. Tiny stitched L. Bag. Tag. Ritual keeps hearts from shouting. 10:52. A voice calls a name, thin through timber, left of the draw where a baby creek is deciding what to be. Lena. 2 syllables shaped like someone speaking into a scarf. Sounds like Ivor. Except Ivor's voice usually laughs at the edges. This one doesn't. It says her name and waits like a bridge. Nix lifts a hand. Heads swivel. Everyone refines a face. Thayer. Thayer. Roland. The voice tries again. Help. A dog bristles, then thinks better of it. Wind turns the voice into a trick. Now above, now behind, now whispering from the leaves at their boots. Lena? Roland plants a ribbon and a time on a larch and draws an arrow fatter than the rest. We don't answer, he says, calm enough to steady the world. We mark and move. By noon, sun saws through the cloud and turns steam into foxfire. Teams reset. Dogs drink in wide licks. The medic truck ladles sugar into paper cups. Kaya slides each bead of the day onto a string, times, places, and a line that means more than the paper can hold. Voice saying, Lena. No face. Afternoon, a different kind of luck. Farspur team finds a neat cone stack beside a rock scratch. Lena, her sister will later say, loves to arrange things. The cones point toward a cleft, the map calls nothing. Old guys at the cafe used to call it buzzard slot. At 16:31, they find Ivor. He's on his back, one leg crooked the wrong way, eyes open to the sky like he's willing to believe in it, lips split white with thirst. He makes a sound that's half apology, half joy. We stayed on the spine, dropped too fast, rain shoved us into a bad shelter. We heard the lookout radio from the valley, the weather loop, thought it was a truck, followed it, found no truck. Then we heard Lena's name, my voice saying it, but not mine. I didn't answer. That's why I'm still here. Where's Lena? Nix asks from the edge of the circle. Went to water, said she'd follow a trail of tin cans and bad jokes back to me, left a cone pile every 30 steps. Then the voice said my name, like her mouth. I said hers once, too soft for the trees to catch. After that, I held my tongue. She's been gone since just before sunup. 17:54. They find Lena. 10 minutes east, 2 pitches up, tucked into a granite room. One hand on a ledge like she meant to pull herself into another day, and paused here. Cold, not lost. Shy pulse. Hairline cut with the head's usual drama. Jerky pouch, empty. Pockets full of gravel, her attempt at a breadcrumb trail in a place that only Prince would stone. Wind keeps the helicopter on a leash, so they burrito the pair in foil, wool, and intention. Move them by patient inches. Dogs trot with tails up, doing what dogs were born to do. Ivor talks about coffee like a religion. Lena says river like a baptism. On the tailgate under a county floodlight, lines running into arms, Lena gets her question to work. The voice, she tells Nix, it said his name. It came from the wrong place, above, behind, under my feet. I didn't answer. I counted to 50, then 50 again. Sat on my hands so they wouldn't lift like a trained dog. I just repeated your rule. Find a face. Say a name you can see. People get hurt up here when they answer a mouth that doesn't have their best in mind. You did right. Thayer. Because brains want drawers to push fear into we were never alone, were we? Lena gives a small, tilted smile. That's mountains for you. You're with wind. With water. With old decisions other people made and left hanging in the trees. We borrowed theirs. Wind behaves. Helicopter drops in. Medics step out with faces that make mothers cry from relief alone. They pack the dosses like a wedding dress into a trunk and lift. A scrub pine below the ridge, bows, releases, bows again. After midnight, Kaya types the sentence that chased her all day. The missing campers were never alone. She knows it's not a checkbox, she puts it in anyway. The weeks after, the valley chews it. In diners, it was echo. On lifts, radio bounce. In coveralls, catamount. Brain mirrors, and then quieter. The one sentence that matters. If you hear your name in timber and there's no mouth in sight, don't answer. A month later, blue sky so clean it feels stolen. The Dosses bring a paper bag to the ranger cabin. Knit hats, plain and practical. On the tag, Lena's neat line for when the wind forgets itself. They sit with Nix and, briefly, Kaya. Words are carefully unimportant. Nix talks burned hills, learning green. Ivor describes a mispainted bridge teaching Boise patience. Lena says she now speaks her people's names out loud each morning, not to offer anything to the air, just to remind her mouth what it's for. She adds one small thing, offhand. Counting while it called, I pictured roll call. Teacher calls your name chalk in her hand. You only say here if you can see the chalk. That helped. By next fall, a laminated card shows up on the camp host board at Loon Creek. No sermon, just a rule in rainproof letters. If you're overdue, sit, count, save heat, call only when you see a face. Do not answer the timber. No author. The host denies it, then admits he likes that he would have. Winter lays down thin law. One dawn in a high cabin, a radio unplugged, says a name perfectly. The men grin like at an old joke. They say each other's names and keep making eggs. Sun clears the window. They follow the line they marked in gray light and find a snowmobiler parked like a guy at a bus stop choosing a story. He says, "I heard you all night." They say, "Not us, friend, but we're here now." Years later, at the Shoop Cafe, Sunday closing time, you might hear it slide by. Loggers arguing about draws, a couple practicing their baby's name, somebody at the counter saying, "Those campers below Jarvie, they weren't alone." Nobody is out there. The hills keep you company, sometimes too well. If you catch Kaya after a shift, headset marks on her face, she won't give you a ghost story. But if you ask what she learned that September, she'll look at the river and say this: listening is work. Names are tools. Home is where you only answer when you can see who's asking. A town can hold itself together with a quiet rule repeated by people not interested in drama. She might even add, very soft, that the missing campers were never alone, and neither are you, if your hands stay steady and your mouth remembers when to keep its strength. Then she'll tip well, step into a night that smells like pine and iron and rain, and head home where a clock mutters forward, a radio sleeps politely, and the mountains lean in, listening like they always do. What happened inside the tunnel changed him forever. It starts with first snow over the Cheat River, late November, year 2011. The kind of ash-colored flurry that only sticks where the mountain keeps its shade. Down in the cut, where an old railroad spur once ran through Brushy Mountain, there's a brick-lined tunnel that still breathes iron and limestone like it never retired. Locals know. Places like that are older than whatever story you brought with you. The man who walked in that night was 38-year-old Thayer Mott. 2 years home from a blistering overseas contract where dawn came with a buzzer and the heat tried to erase you daily. Back in West Virginia, he did county roads, cones, culverts, sleeves, rolled exactly the way your grandfather approves of. Off the clock, he carried radios for fun, listened to the weather net the way other men listened to baseball. Thayer lived alone in a small cottage that apologized every winter for one window that never sealed right. And he had a rule: write things down and the world behaves, at least for a while. At exactly 1950, by a cheap, luminous watch whose hands never lied, Thayer stepped into the Brushy portal. He'd told dispatch Lenox Vale that he'd walk the right-of-way from Brushy to Quarry, check drains, note a small rock slide from last week, headlamp, warm white, a spare in his pocket because batteries lie. He descended the stone throat. Brick arched overhead, ballast underfoot, old rails long since lifted clean for quick money. He kept to the shoulder, counted steps, scraped slate from the crown with the toe of his boot, and wrote little facts on a card because little facts keep the big ones honest. 50 steps. The foot sound changed dry to damp. The tunnel sound, river on stone, temperature wind, steady drip settled around him. And then at 2012, something new slid in beside him. Not ahead, not behind, beside. A girl's voice. Not echo, not machine. A child's cadence without the child's confidence. First a rising vowel like someone tuning their courage. Then a single word delivered with precise hope. Thayer. Too close. He did not answer. In Monongahela County, rule number 1 for deep places is simple. When the dark learns your proper name, do not answer. The voice tried again. Thayer. A tiny clatter shoe to bottle somewhere along the brick. A little grit slithered down the wall. Thayer laid his left palm flat to the tunnel to tell his nerves where his body ended, lifted his radio with his right, and went bureaucratic on purpose. County Mott, Brushy Tunnel, on foot, moving west. I have a voice event. Log it at 2012. I'm not answering. Continuing slow to center. Line of retreat established. Over. Lennox came back with the calm you hear from storm spotters who've seen it all. Copy voice event. Keep that lamp honest. And if the dark tries to be clever, you be boring back. Thayer moved 10 careful steps. The story he didn't request kept coming. The floor sagged, a half-inch subsurface water chewing quietly at the bed. The left